I mean, as if it isn't just hard enough just being a Jets fan and just existing as a Jets fan. That is a chore in and of itself. Last thing you really needed last night was Sam Darnold in another 300-yard game.
Well, it doesn't matter anymore. He's gone.
Well, yeah, but I'm sure there's some Jets fans out there that still watch that game, Moose, and kind of longingly sort of wonder what if and could they have made it work here with Sam. Now, we understand why. A couple reasons. One, his contract, you're going to have to pick up the option, and you had the number 2 overall pick, and you just thought Zach Wilson's ceiling was higher than Sam Darnold's. We're not going to know about that for several years, but you understand the logic that the front office was working with. But I'm sure for fans, it doesn't make it any easier. And last night in that game, quite frankly, Christian McCaffrey leaves the game with a hamstring in the second quarter. Darnold fumbles the ball, they recover it, and you're wondering, like, man, is this going to fall apart? And to Sam's credit, it did not. He put together a very good second half. Granted, against a Texans team that's not very good, but whatever. You were facing adversity, and Sam came through and was the winning player. They're 3-0 now. I think it's twofold, too, because you're still going to always have the what if with Sam Darnold. What if, the team had just put more around him? What if, they had never hired Adam Gase? What if? All of those. But you have a second what if from last night also, which is about Matt Rule. What if the Jets had hired Matt Rule instead of hiring Adam Gase? What if they had just relented and allowed him to bring whatever assistant coaches he wanted to bring here? At least that's what was reported, right? What if you had just taken just a couple different turns, and how much different and how far along could you be at this point? I mean, I'm not saying that Jets fans should dwell on this. I'm not saying you should live in here, but I can understand why you'd be wondering and asking yourself those questions today.
Yeah, I think less about Rule, more about Darnold for me. And I think for Darnold, the guy that's got to eat it is Douglas. He made the decisions.
Yep. He had a chance to strengthen the team. He made the decisions
that said basically he's not good enough, or he wanted to move forward, or he wanted to have his guy, and said all the right things, but his actions would lead you to believe otherwise. So Douglas has got to wear it. Well, Sam Darnold. So everyone that said that Sam Darnold couldn't play in the NFL or that he stunk is not true. Sam Darnold's got nearly 900 yards passing in the first 3 weeks. He's accounted for 6 touchdowns. The Carolina Panthers, even though the schedule is very, very easy, not going to tell you they went through an unbelievable, they took on the Jets. They embarrassed the Saints, more so defensively than offensively, but they embarrassed the Saints. And then last night took advantage of a really what is a meek opponent with Davis Mills at quarterback in the Houston Texans. So, but 3-0 nonetheless. Here's what impressed you last night about Darnold. Number one is I think everybody and their mother after McCaffrey goes down with that hamstring injury and saying, oh, my God, the Texans are actually going to beat this team because Sam stinks. Well, you know what? And I know he fumbled twice and got hit, and he was taking an absolute pounding. That Carolina Panther offensive line was giving up odd man rushes all night long and was delivering the football. So they were obviously put the ball on the turf twice. That can't continue. Happened, thankfully for Carolina, they recovered both of those fumbles that he put on the turf, but he was able to step up, took the hits, played significantly better in the second half without McCaffrey, made a lot of great throws. They got the rookie tight end from Notre Dame involved. Moore, who left the game and got a little bit banged up late in the game, he had himself, 8-9 catches, I think over 130 yards receiving. So Moore now wearing number 2 for Carolina was very, very good. We know he's got a connection with Robbie Anderson as well. Darnold played really, really well. That's why I asked the question of Rappaport yesterday, is the excitement down there in Carolina just as exciting, are they just as excited having Stafford? Well, the answer is no, and that's open and honest because Stafford is a better quarterback than Sam Darnold, and that's fair. But clearly, they couldn't stand Bridgewater and got rid of him after 1 year, right? Or there were limitations to what they felt Bridgewater was going to be a quarterback. And I think for last night, for Sam, he overcame what was a pretty significant hurdle because I think after the week 1 performance against the Jets, everyone said, well, it's easy. You've got McCaffrey. Well, last night, and I know it's the Texans, McCaffrey loses that game. Sam Darnold led that team to a road victory to 3-0 and was fantastic in the second half. Good for Sam.
Yeah, 17 points in the second half, 10 in the fourth quarter. I mean, that's going to be a good recipe for you. And one thing that Troy Aikman kept saying, and I think this is right, you just liked how he kept being aggressive. He kept being aggressive and kept looking downfield, and that really worked out well for Sam Darnold. But I agree with you on Douglas having to wear it, but not so much about him deciding to move on from Sam and going with Zach Wilson. That I understood. I think where where Joe Douglas has to wear it is before 2020. Before the season of 2020, when you had tons of cap space, when you had more talent, than I would say more talent than on the team right now. You had some talent. You had a roster where you had two different directions you could have gone, right? You could have fortified this roster. You could have really tried to build around Sam. You could have been more aggressive. And instead, you really just kind of sat on your hands. I guess good job getting first-round picks for Jamal Adams, but you were setting yourself up for the future there. You had a chance to really commit to Darnold, and they decided to pass and instead went the total opposite direction, which was instead, gunning for the highest pick they possibly could with, Trevor Lawrence coming out, and then obviously Wilson ends up being the second overall pick. So, that's where I would say if you're upset at Joe Douglas because you're watching Sam Darnold now play competently and look like he's a good starter in this league, that's where it is. It's not the decision they made after the season. It's the decision they made before it. That's where I would have the gripe.
Well, yeah, but one thing led to another, right? So they made the decision that they weren't going to build around Sam Darnold, and what they got was a bad year.
Terrible year. But that's where I would say the failure was. Once they got to the bad year, and then you're presented with that option, I would have taken that too if I were Douglas.
But you make that decision because you don't believe in the quarterback. One has everything to do with the other. You would never. I mean, Joe Douglas, then it would be fireable. A fireable offense. If you believe in the quarterback and a young signal caller and you are as inactive as he was, then Joe Douglas should be fired on the spot. He didn't do anything because he didn't believe in the quarterback. And now the quarterback's showing that he can play. Whatever you want to say, the narrative that Sam Darnold can't play in the NFL, that narrative now, for at least right now, has been buried. I mean, it really has. Now, we could debate about the caliber of player that Sam Darnold's going to be in the National Football League. We can. But you put him around a competent organization with good coaching and good players, and Sam Darnold has thrived.